Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The guards dragged her down corridors of polished obsidian, their clawed hands digging into flesh marked with the inked history of a dead world. H3 Ra didn't struggle. She'd been preparing for this moment since the Resistance elders had first whispered the ancient stories into her ears, stories of earth, of blood sport, of glory. The human shows no fear, hissed the Vexery guard, mandibles clicking with disappointment. Perhaps the rumors of your species' domestication are true. Ra met his compound eyes with the stillness of a predator. The tattoo at her nape, a map of old Earth's northern continent, burned beneath the collar they'd fastened there. 300 years of subjugation, of careful breeding programs designed to purge humanity of its savage instincts, had failed with her. The Resistance had made certain of that. Arena Prime soared above them, a massive structure of alien steel and crystalline viewports that curved into the amber sky. Billions across the galactic empire would watch, today's games would watch her die, if the oddsmakers were to be believed. No human had fought in the arena for centuries, most believed their combat genes had been bred out, their history as warriors long forgotten. Cell block, new meat, announced the second guard, shoving her through a shimmering force field. Combat begins in 2 cycles. The Empire thanks you for your contribution to galactic entertainment. Inside, a diverse collection of captives paced in separate cells. Some were massive, armor-plated beings that lumbered on 6 limbs, others were liquid creatures suspended in containment fields. A few were more humanoid, but none were human. They stared at her with curiosity, amusement, or hunger. Look what the Vexery dragged in, rasped a reptilian prisoner across the corridor. A human. I haven't crushed human bones since the fall of Earth. His scales rippled with anticipation. They're sending you in with Morgth. You won't last 30 seconds. Ra said nothing, examining the walls of her cell with calculated precision. The Resistance had trained her for every scenario, every weapon, every combat style known in the galaxy, but training wasn't reality. She touched the tattoo on her forearm, a sequence of genetic code that the elders said had been activated in her bloodline, enhanced reflexes, accelerated cognition during threat response. The old Earth warrior genes, preserved and amplified. When the guards returned, they brought primitive weapons, a gesture toward Arena Prime's supposed adherence to traditional combat. Ra selected a short blade and a metal shield, tools that felt like extensions of her limbs. They'd expected her to fumble, to show the awkwardness of a species that had forgotten warfare. Instead, her grip was perfect. The tunnel to the arena floor vibrated with the roars of spectators overhead. Screens displayed her opponent, Morgth, champion of the Draken sector, a hulking mass of muscle and bone spurs who had decapitated his last 3 challengers. The odds against her survival flashed in 17 languages. Ra closed her eyes. Beneath her eyelids, she traced the memory tattoos of ancient Earth warriors, Spartans, Samurai, Zulu, their techniques coded into the very pigments that marked her skin. The Resistance had designed her markings as both historical record and combat manual. Citizens of the glorious Empire, boomed the announcer's voice, today we bring you an extinct predator, a relic of old Earth, to face our reigning champion. The gates opened. Sunlight and noise washed over her like a wave. H3 Ra versus the undefeated Morgth, intoned the system. She stepped into the light, blade ready, her face a mask of cold calculation that confused the audience. They had expected terror, they had expected weakness. Instead, they got their first glimpse of humanity's forgotten face, the face of a species that had once dominated an entire planet through sheer, relentless violence. Begin, said the Emperor's automated voice. Ra moved. The first kill was deliberate, methodical, uninspired. Within seconds, she realized that Morgth's reputation relied on overwhelming force rather than technique. His 7-foot frame moved with predictable aggression, leaving openings that her enhanced reflexes exploited with surgical precision. When he fell, his throat opened by her blade, it was with a precision that silenced the arena. The crowd didn't cheer, they stared in confused silence. The human anomaly, H3 Ra, had won. 3 weeks later, as H3 Ra prepared for her 7th match, the announcers had developed a new narrative, the human anomaly, RTRS, they called her, the Earthborn Executioner. Arena officials had upgraded her quarters, moving her from the cells to a private chamber befitting her emerging status, not out of respect, but out of marketability. Viewership had spiked across the galaxy, everyone wanted to see the human who fought like a machine but killed like an artist. Your popularity is unexpected, said Vexler, her assigned handler, a tall Syrian with metallic blue skin. The Emperor himself has taken notice. Ra maintained her silence, focusing instead on the ritual that preceded each match. She traced the tattoos spiraling across her arms, ancient battle maps of Earth's greatest conflicts, Thermopylae to Gettysburg to New Shanghai. Each inked line contained micro-encoded combat data accessible through meditative focus, a technology the Resistance had perfected over generations. You should speak sometimes, Vexler continued. The audience finds your silence unnerving. Mystery sells tickets, but personality builds followers. I'm not here for followers, Ra replied, her voice rough from disuse. Vexler's bioluminescent patterns flickered with surprise. She speaks. And why are you here, human? The others fight for freedom, for wealth, for their home worlds. Ra met his gaze. I fight to remind. The answer puzzled him, but he had no time to inquire further. The summons came, her next opponent awaited, an Aquarian assassin, undefeated in 17 matches. Fighters from their water world were notorious for their poison-tipped appendages and hypnotic movements. As Ra entered the arena, she noticed something different among the usual imperial banners and corporate sponsorships. Small groups of spectators watched with unusual intensity. They were scattered throughout the stands, service workers, mid-level bureaucrats, cargo pilots, the invisible human diaspora assimilated into imperial society. They wore no identifying markers, displayed no obvious solidarity, but their eyes followed her with something beyond mere entertainment, something like hope. The fight began. The Quarian moved like fluid mercury, its limbs creating patterns designed to disorient. Ra allowed herself to be pushed back, appearing to struggle. The crowd murmured with disappointment. Had the human phenomenon reached her limit? Then she struck, not with desperate aggression but with terrible clarity. Every movement economized, every strike deliberate. The Quarian's natural advantages meant nothing against her calculated violence. When it ended, Ra did something unprecedented. She looked directly into the hovering cameras and spoke, her voice carrying to billions across the empire. My name is not H3 Ra. It's Hara, she said, touching the coded tattoo on her neck. Earth remembers. The transmission cut immediately, but not before her words reached every inhabited world in the empire. In the luxury suites, imperial officials exchanged concerned glances. In the worker barracks of 1,000 planets, humans looked up from their tasks. In a hidden resistance stronghold, elders nodded with satisfaction. The broadcast was back online within seconds. The announcers chattered about technical difficulties, but Hara knew she had accomplished her goal. The first message had been sent. That night, in her private chamber, Vexler entered without announcement, his expression grave. You've complicated things, he said. The Emperor demands to know what you meant by those words. Hara looked at him calmly. If he doesn't already know, he soon will. They'll kill you for this, she smiled for the first time. They'll try. Emperor Zordhal VIII studied the human female on the monitor with acute fascination. His 16 sensory appendages twitched with calculations as advisors presented their reports. Genetic analysis confirms our suspicions, said High Geneticist Cav. She carries activated markers we thought were eliminated from the human genome centuries ago, aggression sequences, cognitive battle mapping, adrenal enhancements, all artificially preserved. Impossible, hissed Security Minister Thrall. The breeding programs were thorough. We've maintained human docility for 3 centuries. The Emperor's translucent skin pulsed with contemplative colors. Never underestimate adaptive resistance. This Hara is engineered, a deliberate revival of human warrior genetics, he mused, gesturing to the holographic display. And now she's becoming a symbol. Dangerous. The arena metrics confirmed his concerns. Human productivity had decreased 4% across imperial territory since Hara's first victory. Minor acts of insubordination had increased 23%, nothing suggesting organized rebellion, but the pattern was clear, awakening consciousness among a species long considered neutralized. The logical solution is elimination, Thrall suggested. A public execution would create a martyr. No, the Emperor interrupted. We require something more instructive. His appendages coiled thoughtfully. Bring me Arena Master Quell. Hara felt the change immediately. Her next 3 opponents would not be the usual gladiators, but specialized hunters from the Emperor's elite forces, disguised as ordinary combatants. Each came equipped with weapons specifically designed to counter her fighting style, which meant they'd been studying her. She survived, but each victory came with new scars. After the third such match, she collapsed in her chamber, blood seeping through hastily applied med patches. "They're testing your limits," observed Vexler, applying a healing compound to her wounds. Over the weeks, his initial clinical detachment had evolved into reluctant admiration. "The Emperor wants to understand what you are, before he decides how to destroy you." Hara nodded, conserving strength. "And what have you reported to him about me?" The question caught him off guard. "I've reported what I've observed," he finally admitted, "but perhaps not everything I've concluded." Before she could probe this surprising admission, Arena Master Quell himself appeared at her door, an unprecedented visit from the Emperor's right hand. "Congratulations, human," the massive draconian rumbled, his scaled face unreadable. "Your performance has earned you a singular honor. The Emperor has decreed a special event. You will face the grand champions of each quadrant simultaneously." Hara's expression remained impassive, though she understood the sentence being delivered. No gladiator had ever survived such a challenge. "The broadcast will reach every corner of the Empire," Quell continued. "The Emperor himself will attend." After he departed, Vexler turned to her with genuine concern. "This is execution, not combat. Even you cannot survive against 4 grand champions." "I'm not meant to survive, Vexler," Hara replied calmly. "I'm meant to die spectacularly, proving human inferiority." She began tracing the tattoos along her ribs, ancient military formations from Earth's history. But the Emperor misunderstood what she was. "And what are you?" his voice asked. "Not the rebellion," her eyes held a cold fire, "just its herald." That night, underground communications flared across 1,000 worlds. Humans in mining colonies, agricultural centers, and industrial complexes exchanged furtive messages. Dormant resistance cells activated preparations. On the morning of the match, Arena Prime reached maximum capacity for the first time in 50 years. The Emperor's arrival, rare for any event, transformed the atmosphere into a religious fervor. The massive arena, carved from an asteroid and suspended in planetary orbit, gleamed under artificial sunlight. As Hara entered the combat zone, the crowd's roar became deafening. Many had paid fortunes to witness what Imperial propaganda promised would be the definitive demonstration of why humanity had been rightfully subjugated. Across from her, 4 doors opened simultaneously. From each emerged a nightmare, the undisputed champions of their respective quadrants, each having killed hundreds, each representing the apex predator species of their region of space. The Emperor's voice filled the arena. "Today we correct a historical misunderstanding. Today we remind the galaxy of natural order." Hara looked up directly at his luxury observation pod and spoke clearly into her activated microphone. "Yes, we will." The first champion died 4 minutes into the combat, the Fkilian war priest whose barbed tail had claimed 300 lives. Hara used his own ceremonial weapon to sever his primary heart stem. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she strode through the carnage. The second fell 7 minutes later, the cybernetically enhanced Tauron whose neural processors could anticipate attack patterns. Hara had simply moved in ways no algorithm could predict. The third and fourth champions coordinated their efforts, recognizing the threat. For 20 brutal minutes, Hara weathered their onslaught, her body a canvas of fresh wounds painted over the tattoos of her lost home world. When the final champion, the massive Draken whose exoskeleton had never before been penetrated, fell, Arena Prime fell silent. Even the Emperor's extensive entourage sat motionless, 16-limbed courtiers frozen in disbelief. Blood pooled beneath Hara as she stood amid the carnage, her breathing measured despite multiple injuries. Medical drones hovered nervously at the arena's edge, awaiting permission to retrieve the valuable champion. Instead, Hara walked deliberately to the center of the arena, every camera focused on her blood-streaked face. "I am Hara," she said, her voice carrying across the Empire. "And I am not exceptional." The Emperor's guards moved toward their communications arrays, but he raised a limb to stop them, curiosity overriding caution. "What you've witnessed isn't special," Hara continued. "It's inheritance. For 3 centuries you've kept us fragmented, convinced we were always servants. You rewrote our history, bred out our strength." She touched the tattoos visible through her torn combat suit. Some remembered. Some preserved what we were throughout the Empire. Humans paused in their labors, in mining facilities on Centauri Prime, field hands on the moons of Proxima, assembly lines on Tidy. They straightened as view screens flickered with her words. In the luxury observation pod, the Emperor's skin darkened with alarm. "Cut the transmission," he ordered. Too late. Across 17,000 Imperial outposts, a subtle shift had begun, recognition but not yet rebellion. In the medical bay hours later, Vexler stood beside her regeneration chamber, his expression grave. "You've complicated things." He paused. "You're too valuable as entertainment to execute immediately, officially. Your popularity has reached unprecedented levels. Unofficially, they're developing specialized neurotoxins for your species. Your next match will appear legitimate, but your opponent will carry weapons designed to ensure your death appears natural." Hara nodded unsurprised. "And you're telling me this because..." Vexler's bioluminescent patterns shifted, revealing hidden pigmentation resembling her own tattoos. "Because some rebellions span more species than you imagine," he whispered. "And some chains are invisible even to those who wear them." The night before her scheduled execution match, Hara sat cross-legged in her chamber, eyes closed, fingers tracing the most sacred of her tattoos, a detailed genetic sequence spiraling around her heart. The Resistance elders had called it the Awakening Code, though they'd never fully explained its purpose. The door slid open. Vexler entered, accompanied by a hooded figure. "We have minutes before security protocols resume," he said urgently. "This is Kala, our contact in the ventilation systems." The figure lowered her hood, revealing a face similar to Hara's, human but with subtle differences, mixed ancestry, partially Arcturi, and eyes that shimmered with iridescence. "The Resistance has penetrated deeper than the Empire realizes," Kala said. "But we need time. Your execution tomorrow is necessary." Hara interrupted calmly. "You misunderstand what my role has always been." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing a tattoo they hadn't noticed before, a simplified schematic of Arena Prime's broadcast array. "The Resistance has planted specialized code in the transmission network. When activated by specific neural patterns, my neural patterns, it will override Imperial firewalls." Understanding dawned on Vexler's face. "Your death will be the trigger." Hara nodded. "When I die in that arena tomorrow, my brain will release a unique electromagnetic signature, part of my genetic modifications. The broadcast system will capture it and transmit, not just my death but everything stored here." She tapped her temple. 300 years of suppressed human history, combat techniques, resistance locations, everything needed to ignite coordinated rebellion. "You've been a living data cache," Kala whispered. "But there must be another way." "There isn't," Hara replied. "The Emperor will be watching. The entire Empire will be watching." Vexler's bioluminescence darkened with emotion. "There's something else you should know. Your opponent tomorrow is a cerebral devourer. They're bringing one from the outer darkness specifically for you." The revelation made Hara smile. "Perfect. Their psychic abilities will amplify the transmission." The night passed in hushed preparation, not for escape, but for apotheosis. Arena Prime had never seen such attendance. The upcoming match had been promoted across the Empire as the ultimate spectacle, the human anomaly versus the legendary cerebral devourer, a sentient hunter from the void between galaxies, capable of consuming neural energy directly from its victims. The Emperor himself sat prominently in his observation pod, surrounded by geneticists and military advisors. This wasn't entertainment for him, it was the final resolution of a potential threat. When Hara entered the arena, a new chant began, first from scattered human workers in the crowd, then spreading to other species who had grown to admire her defiance. "Hara rises." The Emperor's appendages twitched with annoyance as he signaled for the match to begin. Immediately, the opposite gate opened, revealing darkness so absolute it appeared to bend light around its edges. The cerebral devourer emerged, not a physical form but a rippling distortion of reality. It moved like oil across water, its surface occasionally revealing glimpses of faces it had consumed over millennia. Hara stood motionless as the creature approached. The audience fell silent, sensing the gravity of what they witnessed. This wasn't combat, it was sacrifice. When the devourer struck, Hara made no move to defend herself. The creature engulfed her in its amorphous form, its psychic tendrils penetrating her consciousness. The arena's screens displayed her vital signs plummeting as the devourer began consuming her neural energy. The Emperor's inner eyelids closed in satisfaction, then snapped open as something unprecedented happened. The creature convulsed, its form recoiling violently as if poisoned. Hara remained standing, her eyes open but unseeing, her body rigid, as neural energy visibly coursed across her skin, flowing not from her to the creature, but from somewhere deep within her into the arena itself. The broadcast system surged with power. Every screen in Arena Prime flickered, then stabilized to show not the match but rapid-fire images: Earth before its fall, humans fighting initial Imperial incursions, resistance fighters preserving genetic material underground, training facilities, coded transmission frequencies, weapons caches, sleeper cell locations. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded as his advisors frantically worked their communication arrays. "She's broadcasting luminance," stammered the chief technician. "Not just here, everywhere. Every Imperial channel, every colonial frequency." The cerebral devourer shrieked in agony, functioning as an unwilling amplifier. Its psychic abilities enhanced the transmission beyond any technological limitations. Hara's consciousness, everything she had been encoded to carry, poured into the Empire's communication network. In the stands, humans who had lived entire lives in servitude suddenly straightened as ancestral memories awakened within them. On thousands of worlds, human workers looked up from their tasks with new understanding in their eyes. As the transmission reached its peak intensity, Hara's physical form began to fail. The tattoos across her body glowed with impossible light, burning from within as the genetic codes activated their final sequence. With her last conscious thought, she broadcast a single phrase, not spoken but transmitted directly from her pulsing neural patterns. "Hara falls. Earth rises." Her body collapsed as the cerebral devourer disintegrated, unable to contain the psychic backlash. In the stunned silence that followed, the Emperor understood immediately what had happened. This had never been about one gladiator's rebellion, it had been about awakening an entire species. He turned to his war minister. "Initiate containment protocols on all human populations," he ordered. Immediately, the command center responded, "Communications are down, Luminance. We're receiving reports of coordinated uprisings in 17 sectors already." Outside Arena Prime, the first explosions began, precision strikes against Imperial infrastructure by resistance cells that had waited generations for this signal. The final message from a warrior born to die within hours had become the spark that would liberate them all.